welcome everyone to Building Materials Marketing Unboxed. This is Season 2, Episode 17, and the title of today's show is E-commerce channel management and indirect selling trends shaping buyer behavior. My name is Will Smith. I am your host, and today we are joined by Brian Beck. He is a managing partner at Enceba. Enceba is a company that focuses exclusively on enabling brands and manufacturers on the Amazon marketplace. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Today is all about e-commerce. So let's get right to it. Let's meet Brian. And basically, to sum it all up, he's kind of a quadruple threat here. Brian is not only is he a musician, but he is also an athlete. He's also an author. And of course, he is an e-commerce expert. So these are the important things, ladies and gentlemen. You're here, so let's meet Brian. So first things first, he's a piano player and a recorded songwriter. That's right. We did our research beforehand, and Brian's going to tell you that where you can find his recorded music. So support the arts, ladies and gentlemen, and you'll find out how as soon as we bring him on the show. He regularly plays doubles volleyball, but he admits that he is way too short to actually play volleyball. But I don't know if that's true. If you've ever seen Top Gun, if Tom Cruise can play volleyball, I think anybody can play volleyball. It doesn't matter what your height is. So he is, as I mentioned, quadruple threat here. He's also an author. He is a published author. He's an author of the book Billion Dollar B2B E-commerce, which of course is all about digital transformation. And that's why Brian is here with us today. But more than that, he says that his most important jobs are that of husband and dad. And of course, I can relate to that as a father and a husband myself. So, as I mentioned, Brian is a managing partner at Enceba. So please, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome to the show, Brian Beck. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, Will, good to see you. Thanks for having me. And man, you make me sound better than I am here.
Hey, you're our guest.
Man.
We want you to feel important. We want you to feel special.
Well,
so I'm glad we were able to do that for you. So tell me, I promised the audience, so you got to tell me where can we find your music? Where can we hear your music? We're supporting the arts here. Tell us.
Yeah, supporting the arts from 20 years ago, Will. I appreciate that. And by the way, I know you're a piano player too, so that's
this
awesome.
is true. We'll try to keep it on business and off the keys, I guess. But
Right.
I love talking music, so.
That's right. Yeah, no, it's a great part of my life, and always has been for since I was a little kid. Yeah, so going back 20 years, support the arts from 20 years ago. I'm a songwriter. Was published. I'm a member of ASCAP, which is the American Association of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, and all the rest. About 20 years ago, I released an album, and it's you can actually find it today still on Amazon. It's called Blue Monday, and you have to type in Blue Monday Shades of Blue is the name of the album, and it's up there on Amazon. I just checked it this morning, and it's still there. You can still get it. So. Have at it, everyone. Support the arts.
I love it. I don't know. I'm getting kind of Ron Swanson, Parks and Recs vibes. I don't know. What's the style? What's the style that you primarily from 20 years ago?
Got it. Well, it was kind of back then. It was all about it's kind of a pop a little jazz influence. It was a female singer. It was very good. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of we're going kind of for a little bit of that Madonna, like William Orbit vibe, from we're talking 2001 here, people. So that was all the rage back then. Not so much anymore.
Well, hey, blast from the past. It still sounds like a good blast from the past. So let's definitely do it. And maybe we'll commission a new theme song from you one of these days.
There you go.
Or we'll collaborate. I always threaten the audience that we're gonna put together all of our guests because we've had so many musicians on here. We're just gonna put everybody together and we'll just jam and we'll just come up with a new theme song or something like that.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Great to have you with us today, Brian. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about your industry and tell me one commonly held belief in your industry that you just disagree with passion.
Well, So one of the things I always see, and so one of the reasons I wrote my book, Billion Dollar B2B E-commerce. There's a misconception in B2B, and I don't talk about B2B. I'm talking about companies that have been in traditional industries like the building materials industry. For many years, these companies may have been in business for 50, 100, 200 years. And too often, I find companies think about e-commerce as either an IT project or they think about e-commerce as just a sales support function. When in fact, e-commerce is a central part of an overall digital transformation for a company. And what does that mean? Digital touches every single aspect of a business operation. Sales, obviously, and the selling function, but even things like marketing, even things like finance, fulfillment, operations, it is across the entire business. And when companies think about it in a sort of in a silo, as it's just a channel or one sort of piece of the business, they miss what it can do for the business. And not only that, they limit the effectiveness of the overall sort of digital potential for their business. So one of the things I think, I encourage companies to do when I work with them is to change how they're thinking about it. And that has implications for also how you bring e-commerce and digital transformation into a business, because it really has to come from the very top of the business. And that is, that's one of that's why chapter 2 of my book is called The Leadership Imperative. It's called that because, it really has to come from there and work its way through the organization. So, did I lose you? I may have lost you.
No, you're still here. We got you. It's all good. Oh, I think we lost Brian for a second there. We've been having a few internet problems today, so no worries.
Let's try this again, shall we?
Actually, I'm hearing you, but I think the video is just we're struggling a little bit. So no worries. All right, we're going to get Brian back in a second here. So this is how you know, ladies and gentlemen, that this is a live show. Brian is joining us right now. Let me get him set up here. And there we are. Brian, welcome back.
Thank you. That was a brief intermission. I don't know how much you heard. I love the web.
I will say that was a great start. That was a great first answer that you gave us. Give us a nice kind of overview. You left us wanting more. To be honest,
okay.
You really left us wanting more. So I guess it was.
I hope so. We're only a minute in. Will.
Right, one question. Hey, we retained all our viewers, so of course we got some patient folks on the line here. So as you know, it's live, so anything can happen.
That's right.
So, well, let me ask you this about. You mentioned channel. What are some of the way? Well, the last thing you said was about leadership. Chapter 2 of your book. Really, it has to come from leadership. It has to come from the top down in order to really, rather than thinking it's an IT solution or even a sales function. So let's say for the leaders that are out there that are currently listening to this live show or in a podcast later on, what advice would you give a leader at a building products company that they're bought into launching e-commerce, but they're working to get buy-in from other stakeholders and other decision makers?
Well, there's this whole perception of channel conflict, right? And this is big for manufacturers. Will, I hear this every day. I talk to a lot of manufacturers and distributors across different industries, including in building products, but in others as well. And the fascinating commonality across all these industries is that there is a real concern about channel conflict. And what does that come down to? It comes down to alignment. There's two different types of channel conflict to think about. One is external conflict, and many manufacturers are sort of using channel conflict as a reason not to engage in e-commerce. Whereas I believe strongly that if companies pursue an alignment strategy and they pursue e-commerce the right way, they can mitigate potential risks of conflict. And so I think ultimately, what's key here is alignment with the channel and communication, and I believe strongly in transparency. So if you're going to market with your, with a new e-commerce effort, why are you doing it? How is it going to benefit the channels? And all that's critical, right? So if we think outside the organization, what are some of the things that need to happen there, but also inside the organization? So we talk about alignment. You mentioned, the sales team, the traditional physical sales team that's in your organization must be aligned with your digital and e-commerce efforts. If your sales team is going to fight against e-commerce, you're going to have a hard time succeeding in e-commerce. And what's fascinating is there's always sort of an initial, I hear this from manufacturers all the time, I'm worried about my sales team's reaction to e-commerce. They don't like it. They think it's competitive to them. They think it's going to, even more so than undercut selling their sales. It's almost about demeaning their relationship, right, with the customer, because many of these companies have decade-long relationships with their customers. The sales team, what's fascinating at the other side of this, and I can cite lots of examples of case studies in the book of this, at the end of the day, if e-commerce and the sales process, if that's all done well and in sync, the sales team actually ends up loving e-commerce, because what it does is it takes a lot of the routine tasks that they're taking their time that are low value off of their plate. Where is my order? How many salespeople want to take a question like that? Where's my order? Why am I calling the sales team for that when it can be answered online? That's one thing. But even more so, I mean, it's routine tasks like that, but even more so, research about product. Is the product available? What are the attributes of the product? Customers today want to self-service on their orders, and B2B customers, they want to understand not only about the order status, but about the product they're buying, and they want to do it via the web. And the sales team actually becomes more effective on the other side of this because they have more time. They're able to be more strategic. And the only thing that e-commerce does, quite frankly, Will, in my experience, is it levels up the playing field in the sales team. If you got sales folks who are doing nothing but taking orders and repeat orders from businesses, and that's the only value they add, they're going to be exposed. And those are the folks that might fight the hardest against e-commerce. Those who though, that are truly strategic are winning from e-commerce. Frankly, they get more commission if you set it up right. The e-commerce commission, sales on e-commerce can go to their commission book, and they can make more money. Hear that, sales folks? More money, right, from a successful e-commerce implementation. Anyway, I get on my soapbox. This is an important one. Alignment, you hit on it. Both external, thinking about channel conflict, and internal channel conflict. Both of them can be overcome if you do it right.
So what else? Well, first of all, I'm sold. I mean, that was very convincing. I can tell that you were, you're on your soapbox there and very passionate about it. So great answer there. I love that. So, I mean, I'm pretty much sold, and maybe the folks that are listening out there, they're sold as well. But is there anything else? So I would say, based on your answer, alignment. But what else is getting in the way for many B2B companies that's just stopping them from going digital?
Yeah. Well, I used to say before COVID, I would say, Will, it was, just kind of the business was just good enough, right? I was getting enough growth out of my business. Maybe I'm growing 2 or 3% a year. And, I'm feeling good about where I'm at. I don't have to deal with this e-commerce stuff. It's not, it sounds good, but it's for books and music and t-shirts. Come on. Right? Okay. So COVID came along and changed that. And then all of a sudden, all these doors are closed. And you go, oh my gosh, business isn't just good enough because I don't have any business. Or, you know what I'm saying? Obviously, not every business had no business. That's not what I'm saying. But ultimately, businesses were affected. I had calls from manufacturers all over the world saying, gosh, we have to accelerate our e-commerce efforts because we can't get in the doors of our customers. So I would say number one, historically, it has been business is just good enough. And I don't want to take on the uncomfortable task of changing my organization, dealing with my sales force, fighting back on me, worrying about channel conflict. There's 100 reasons why you wouldn't do e-commerce, right? And you probably hear them all the time, Will. I hear them all the time too. I can list them, right? But I think they're all just excuses not to confront what's happening. What is today? What is the issue? And this has been an issue for a long time, pre and post COVID, in terms of why companies don't accelerate or don't get into this, is leadership. So Digital Commerce 360 did a study recently. It was during COVID, and they asked companies, what are the reasons you aren't further along in your e-commerce effort? Guess what the number 1 and 2 reasons were? It wasn't competitiveness. It wasn't like, oh, we don't have the technology or the best practices don't exist. Number 1 was I don't have enough budget. Number 2 is my senior leadership's not bought in. Still, okay. So, sorry, I get emotional about this stuff. So that's your reason, right? There's your reason, and that's again why the chapter 2 here is about leadership. It's about what is required. It is not comfortable going and implementing e-commerce if you do it right in a B2B company, because a lot of your process is affected. Everything from your fulfillment side to, and even how your warehouses are set up to, your channels saying, hey, I don't want you to do this. Home Depot, Lowe's, Grainger, Motion Industries, MSC, Fastenal, these guys who are distributors, they're concerned about, companies selling direct, but at the same time, they're building their own private labels, and they've got their own issues they're dealing with in terms of, digitally transforming. So listen, every company's out there, they're all protecting their flanks, and distributors are doing it too with private label and other things. So all that said, leadership is the core. Darn it, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're having all kinds of issues here. I was on mute. I'm talking about how Brian wasn't on there. It looks like your video has frozen again. Are you still with us?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Let me just. I'll tell you what. Will, what I'll do is I'll just come right back in. Give me 1 second.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So one of the things that I think that's important that Brian mentioned here was the fact that having those uncomfortable conversations, going through the uncomfortable process, that's really what's going to be the difference maker here. That everybody likes comfort, but unfortunately, in order to grow, in order to move beyond just good enough, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, you got to be uncomfortable. You got to be a little uncomfortable. True?
Well, that's absolutely right. Can you hear me? Well,
yep.
Okay,
we
now?
Gotcha.
Good. Awesome. Perfect. So, being uncomfortable is part of the journey, and it's uncomfort with, again, with the internal team. It's uncomfort with the external channels. People, and my third chapter is about organizational development, right? It's about, getting the right people on the bus, to coin Jim Collins, one of my favorite authors who wrote Good to Great, getting the right people on the bus and getting the wrong people off of it. And there's a fine line, I think. And I think B2B companies they have to recognize, some of your team will come along, and it's okay if they don't understand aspects. People can learn things. I've worked with companies where the executive in charge of e-commerce comes out of 20 years in that industry. They're not an e-commerce professional, but they want to learn. They're hungry to learn. And, I think in those cases where you have the open mind and the willingness, your internal teams can be fantastic components of your digital transformation. What you have to watch out for, though, is the folks who are just going to get in the way of your digital transformation and can't and will actively work against it. And then you have to make some hard decisions. So uncomfort comes down, a lot of the uncomfort in this comes down to your internal organization and making, in some cases, some hard decisions to move people on from the organization if they're not going to help you with this evolution. Because at the end of the day, you've got to move your organization forward in digital. The ultimate customer demands it, and I want to, we'll talk. I'd like to talk a little bit about that, Will. What's changed, right, in the whole dynamic of the B2B purchase cycle, and why that ultimate customer is now in control. But I don't want to throw off your list of topics here, so we can go at that if you want to.
Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, so just expand on that a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about that. Go right ahead.
No problem. So, for years, if you think about, and I don't have a slide deck in front of me, and those of you on a podcast can't see it anyway, but think about how traditionally, right, the B2B buying cycle has worked. You're a manufacturer, you sell to a distributor or a reseller of some kind, and then the ultimate customer buys a product and uses it. In the building products industry, that might be, selling to a distributor, and then the contractor buys it to use it in a residential construction or something project. So that is the traditional flow is easy, simple, right? Each step added value. There wasn't this sort of transparency and visibility across the entire supply chain. But what's happened today is that the end buyer now has so many choices. You've got manufacturers that are selling directly. You've got marketplaces now in the mix, pure play e-commerce marketplaces. Amazon Business, that I do a lot of work with, is one great example of that in terms of how that market's changing. They're doing a lot of B2B volume, $25 billion last year. It's mind-boggling. They're twice the size of Grainger. There's pure play e-commerce players like Granger has started Zorro. You've got other niche marketplaces that are emerging. There's marketplaces in building products. Will, I don't know if you know that, Infra.market. This is a company out of India, folks. That's a pure play construction marketplace that's doing $200 million in a very short period of time. What? Right. So if you don't think the market's changing, you got your head in the sand. So then you got manufacturers selling direct. You've got these new players, and the old line distributors are all trying to mature and introduce digital commerce and e-commerce and other tools. So what does this do? This gives all the power to the end buyer, what I call the ultimate customer in the book, right? And the ultimate customer now has more access to pricing, more access to different places to buy from, more access to different delivery methods. They have new brands they can buy from that you probably have never heard of that are in your category. Try this. Go on Amazon and search for your product name, or not even your brand, just search for your product name. Search for, I don't know, insulation or something, and see who shows up. And you're not going to know some of those brands. And guess what? Some of those brands are doing millions of dollars in revenue. So at the end of the day, on one product, at the end of the day, that has changed. And I believe there's a very strong mandate for manufacturers to get closer to that end customer and understand what they need, how they need it. And if you do that well, and you do it with e-commerce and digital tools, digitally enabling your channels, taking control of Amazon for your product and your brand, you can win. You can turn these trends to your advantage rather than let them own you. Because if you're not doing that, they are owning you, and they'll eventually come and get you. I mean, just look at Sears, look at JCPenney, guys. Look at the consumer segment. They didn't have an excuse. B2B, you have an excuse. So you don't have an excuse, excuse me. So get to it, my opinion, and start tackling these issues, even if you don't know all the answers.
This is probably the most entertaining episode, but informative and entertaining, Brian. Your passion just is oozing through the screen. This is incredible, and I love your directives. You have no excuse, so get to it. Get busy. Fantastic. All right, so let's say the people out there, they say, I want to get busy. I'm listening to Brian. I want to get busy on this. In general, is it better for a company to launch their own e-commerce functionality, or is it better for them to leverage third-party marketplaces?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just making sure my audio is still coming through right. Will, I'm still sounding good?
I gotcha.
Okay, good. Good deal.
You're like, this is going to be a good one, so...
I hope so.
Come on, bring it on.
And by the way, guys, don't take I get really excited about this stuff. I do. I'm passionate about it because I think it's so important. And I see that companies that take advantage of this, they just have so much return on investment when they do it right. It's incredible, right? It's incredible. So to answer your question, is it better to do e-commerce or a marketplace? Look, at the end of the day, I don't think either one is a strategy in and of itself. I think they complement each other. I see this happen all the time. How do manufacturers who are new to e-commerce start in e-commerce? Well, one of the ways I see it, and I see this with our clients at Insiba all the time, they'll start with an Amazon business presence because they can prepare their data, get it ready for market. A lot of the steps necessary for manufacturers are just making sure that the organization has the basic elements, which include product data, to bring product into an e-commerce channel. Amazon provides you a structure for that. It provides existing traffic. It provides a whole host of things that lessen the amount of investment and time necessary for a company to enter e-commerce. So oftentimes, I recommend that companies will start with a strategy on a marketplace like an Amazon, and bring product to market. That not only helps you with your product data, it helps you with your organizational muscle, developing the skill sets necessary to be in e-commerce, as it relates to marketing, as it relates to merchandising product. Merchandising, there's a new concept for most B2B manufacturers. That just means making your product look really great in a end user type environment, a quote unquote retail type environment. But I don't think, look, Amazon on its own or marketplaces on its own are not a strategy in and of themselves. You need to also have your own e-commerce, in my opinion. And that's that's complementary to other channels. And quite frankly, what's so great about your own e-commerce? Well, it's more time and effort to build it, but it's your customer, it's your direct relationship. When you're selling through marketplaces, ultimately it's not your customer, it's the marketplace's customer. So you want to make sure that you have that digital relationship as well as the physical. So what ends up happening is that e-commerce site and the physical sales channels, the sales force, the call center, et cetera, they all work together when this is done right. And that information, when it's done right, is passed back and forth between the e-commerce site and the physical sales force, usually through a CRM system, customer relationship management or sales system, so that you can understand that customer's behavior across all channels. And all of your entire organization is oriented around the customer and what their needs are. So ultimately, that's where you want to land. And marketplaces are a place where people search for product. I don't know if you know this, Will, but 70% of product search is now starting on Amazon, not Google, not retail websites or distributor websites. It's starting on Amazon. So if you're not there, you're missing relevancy to some segment of your customer base, and you're leaking revenue to other competitors. All that said, that's not in of itself an e-commerce strategy. You need to have both, in my opinion. So hopefully I answered your question.
No, I definitely think you did, and it sounds to me like based on what it's a both answer. It's a both and. You need to be on Amazon because that's where, as you just said, most of the places, that's where the searches are going to begin. But you're almost kind of renting space from Amazon on their platform. Whereas if you have your own e-commerce solution that belongs to you, that's whatever Amazon could do what they're going to do. And if something, God forbid, were to happen, then you still have yours in place. Does that sound about right?
That's absolutely right. A good way to think about your own e-commerce is as your digital sales force, right? I mean, it is the extension of your relationship that you've always had with that customer through digital channels. And it does not replace the physical, by the way. It should augment it, as was my point earlier. So yes, but yeah, you said it well.
Well, I just took it off from you. So you said it well first. And I'm sure it's in your book as well.
It is.
So you wrote it well, you said it well, and I just reiterated it. So good stuff here. All right. So what are some common pitfalls, common mistakes that you see that we need to avoid when expanding into e-commerce?
Oh my gosh. So I before our talk today, you sent me a few topics you wanted to talk about, right? And I made a very long list. Okay. So, but I'm going to just summarize a couple. I won't go through all of them. Look, here's the first. Here's
all
the
right,
first thing.
Wait. Before the summary, okay? Can we find that list somewhere? If somebody wants to go out. I mean, is it on Ansiba? Is it on your website?
No, you have to email me for it.
All right.
I mean, I have
all
some
right.
of it in the book.
All right. Well, you guys saw in our original slide that your handle on LinkedIn is e-commerce. Is it
e-commerce expert Beck? Yep, I think
e-commerce expert Beck. It's on your speaker slide. Yep.
No, it is. All right, cool. So ping me. There we go.
There it
is. That's it. E-commerce expert Beck.
All right, super.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yep. So if you want this total list that Brian prepared, those of you that are listening, whether it's now, whether it's in the future on a podcast or watching it again on YouTube because we're having so much fun here, definitely get in touch with him if you want that list. All right. Give us a summary.
So
go for it.
I've got 5.
Perfect.
I got 5.
All right.
So the first mistake is leadership. So and again, I talked about this a little bit. If you do not have the leadership 100% behind this effort, find another job. I mean, I'm joking a little bit, but not entirely. If the leadership is not behind e-commerce and talking about it and willing to work with you, if you're the e-commerce person or the person driving change, you're going to have a really hard time. But where it is there, I have a case study in the book. My book here is a company called Illumina. Totally different industry, manufacturer of medical equipment. $3 billion company, public company. They're going to get this year, we'll get this, 50% of their revenue from e-commerce. 50%, $3 billion company. Okay? Wow! Holy crap. Okay, how do they do it? Well, one of the things, and I'll highlight them maybe a little bit as I give these examples. One of the key elements they had was leadership. The CEO talking to customers about the importance of e-commerce, but even more importantly, internally to the sales teams, to everyone. This was an This was a CEO and board directive in a public company. We are driving this change. Our customers are demanding it. We want to do it. We need to accommodate the customer's needs. So leadership, right? If you don't have it, man, I can't tell you how many companies I talk to, the e-commerce director or the manager or whoever they are, going, I gotta do this business case, that business case. I gotta solve this, that, I gotta make this, argument. I mean, if it's that hard, then you're gonna have a real hard time getting it through and ultimately make the changes you need in the organization. Number two, thinking this is an IT project. I mentioned that earlier. This is not an IT project. You can't just put this in the hands of the IT team and say, "Oh, build us a website." No, because this is across all channels. Number two, not an IT project. Number three, rushing your selection of a platform. So number three, and this is tactical, right? What I mean here is if you go through, I've done. The reason I say this, Will, is this goes deep, man. I've had a lot of pain here. Three, I replatformed one time, and we're going back 10 years. I replatformed one time, three times in a year and a half, three times. And that was so disruptive for the business. And what did I do wrong? I didn't select the right e-commerce foundation, the right platform. Why? Because I listened to the salespeople, right? So you got to be really careful about making sure you understand your objectives and you understand the requirements for setting the foundation. So once you decide, from an objectives perspective to tackle this, you really have to be diligent and take more. It sounds crazy to tell a B2B company to take more time, but take 3 to 6 months up front to really make sure you've got that done well. Number three is failing to align with the sales team. We talked about this, right? If you don't have your sales team involved from the very beginning of your process, you're not going to succeed. They have to be aligned with you. They have to be talking about e-commerce. They have to be aligned with, and there's structures for this. They have to be aligned with the effort overall. And this starts with, and I use the Lumina example, it starts at the very beginning when you're first talking about what are the requirements? What does the customer need out of e-commerce? So your sales team has to be on board and aligned with the effort. And that's number four. Number five is not planning for post-launch adoption. So when you can't just put this up and they will come, right? I mean, some customers will use it, but you need to be thoughtful about how you're driving adoption of your e-commerce platform. You need to make sure you're providing training resources. You need to market to your customers a little bit. Tell them about the benefits of using the e-commerce platform. Also have your sales. Some of my most successful clients have taken someone from the e-commerce team in the sales team. So someone who sits in the sales team who's actually in charge of, or a group of people in charge of going with the sales team to customers or virtually through Zoom, helping the customers understand e-commerce, use the tools that are being provided. You have to have a post-launch adoption plan in order to have success. Those are 5 things. There's about 300 more. The user experience issues, putting up a green screen and not having people, able to use the site because, not adopting the consumer-like best practices for workflows and site functionality. Those are other big areas as well. But anyway, hopefully that helps.
No, that's great stuff right there. And again, if you want that full list, I'm sure there's 300 more. Either get Brian's book, which I'm sure you can find it on Amazon.
Amazon.com.
There you go. Exactly. Or just ping him on LinkedIn, and he'll certainly be able to provide you with the list that he put together. That summary of 5 are really good. I really like that. But let's talk about something that you mentioned in there. We talked about you talked a little bit about customer portals there. Well, not specifically, but you talked a little bit about customer experience there. So what are some of the features of the best customer portals that you have come across?
Yeah, it's interesting. Will, I just did a survey through. I do some advisory work through my company Beck eCommerce, which is engaged sometimes with companies around these issues to help them strategically. And we surveyed over 100 product, mainly manufacturers and distributors, right, B2B across industries. And we also did some interviews with companies, and we asked them that exact question, right? What are the most important features, and particularly those that have been adopted from B to C, right?
Looks like we lost Brian a second there. Can you hear us okay, Brian? All right, he's probably going to jump out and come back in. Yep, just jumped out, and we'll get him back in no problem. For those of you that are experiencing this live, we thank you for your patience. And of course, when we get to this on the podcast, we'll definitely edit it out. So welcome back, Brian.
Yep.
You were getting on a roll
Will,
there.
I'm here. You can hear me.
You were getting on a roll. Let's see if we can capture that passion again.
Yeah, no, don't worry. That's not going anywhere.
I like it.
So I was alluding to, hopefully you heard me, I was talking about some survey work we did just over the summer, and we're about to release it in a white paper, actually. And what we talk about there is the top features, right? We wanted to find out. So you're getting scooped on this, Will. This isn't public yet. What are the top features that are used by B2B e-commerce that come out of B2C and that are effective, right? And so think about it. So here are the top 6, right? This is interesting. Online self-service is number 1. Online self-service. Why? Because a customer wants to go online and guess what? They want information for themselves. They want to find out where their order is. It sounds obvious, but you'd be amazed at how many companies are not doing this. Call the salesperson, call the call center, fax us. Okay, so online self-service, number 1. Number 2, interestingly, is assortment expansion. Assortment expansion online. Yeah. So this is taking your product line that you'd normally have, and this is rated for effectiveness for driving ROI. Okay. So by B2B companies. These are B2B companies in e-commerce, doing e-commerce today. Number 2 is online assortment expansion. So adding more product. Why? Because particularly for distributors, what we found is if you look at their traditional differentiation, their product, and I know we mainly manufacturers here, but think about you enabling your distributors with assortment expansion through drop shipping, through other things. That customer wants a one-stop shop when they come to that website. They want to be able to buy whatever they need from you in one place as opposed to go to a lot of other places. So that was number 2. Number 3, get this, and this is going to be one that manufacturers are going to probably choke over. Prime-like shipping. Oh my goodness. Prime-like shipping. It was like 96% effective, rated by ROI standards by these companies. Prime-like shipping. Well, guys, I mean, this for manufacturers, that's like an anathema. They don't, that's like, oh my gosh, I got to ship something in 2 days. Oh no. Particularly building products, because you're dealing with big bulky items. But according to our survey, that is very important. Number 4, is omni-channel. What does that mean? That means aligning your sales team with e-commerce and having the same consistent information. Pricing, right? Okay, so pricing is so important. I'm going to add to my list of mistakes here, Will. If your pricing is not as the same on your e-commerce site as it is through your contract or your sales force, your e-commerce will not work. Shut it down. Don't bother starting. Just don't even bother because it won't work. So your pricing has to be consistent. That's one of the key tenets of omnichannel. That's number 4. Number 5, get this, product ratings and reviews. What? In B2B? Are you serious? Yes. Product ratings and reviews. Isn't that just for books and music? No. Customers want to understand your product and they want to hear from other customers using it. Now, what we found was interesting about that one, Will, is that not every company is using product ratings and reviews. There's a lot of companies in B2B that aren't, but those that are, remember, this is the ones that are using it, are finding it very valuable, and it helps with their online conversion rate, their people buying again and again because they want to hear from their peers. And the number 6 was wish lists. Really? Wish lists? Like gift list? What? Like gift registry? No, I don't mean gift registry. I mean wish lists. Why? Wish lists, the way B2B buyers use wish lists is they create lists of products that they want to buy later and they don't necessarily want to buy them right away. And that's true because they're passing it to a procurement department, or perhaps they're saving it for later. And one of the other common pieces in this was storing wish lists, because folks want to be able to store things, refer to them later, and perhaps even reorder the wish list, right? So think of it as a job list, not a quote unquote wish list as you think about it in a consumer. But isn't that fascinating? So we found a lot of those B2C features really did resonate in B2B e-commerce. And one thing I'll mention, considering all of my work in the Amazon world, a lot of these things a lot of what Amazon does is they understand what the buyer needs and the features and the types of products, et cetera, et cetera. And they bring them to market. Guess what Amazon has? All of these things. Talk about assortment expansion. Amazon is one massive assortment expansion. So, right? So this is real. This is here, and B2C is meaningful for B2B e-commerce.
That's so true. Especially the one that hit me the most there was that wish list. Because, and like you said, that wish list, I mean, I can't tell you how many lists I have. I probably have 8 to 10 lists right now in Amazon that are segmented differently. Now, I am, in that particular case, B2C, but you're absolutely right. Why can't it work for B2B? You got to send that off to someone else, or you need to, hey, this is everything we need. This is what we're looking at. It makes sense. And I love the fact that you shared that with us today, and that we got, as you put it, the scoop.
You got the scoop, man.
We got the scoop. I love it. That's why we do this. You get great people like yourself on here to give us the scoop, give us the early stuff. So much appreciated.
Sure
Much
thing.
appreciated. Good stuff right there. All right. So 2-day delivery. We talked about how hard that is for, big bulky items, especially in building materials. So how would you recommend companies best overcome that expectation? Let's just say that, while I get what you're saying, I hear you, but there's probably plenty of building material manufacturers out there that are just like, Brian, I'd love to be able to do it, but I just can't. How do you recommend that they overcome that buyer expectation?
Well, I think, a couple things. So I mentioned that 2-day shipping is our, where was it on the list? I think it was number 3, right? Now, keep in mind that surveys across many different industries. I do believe there is an expectation of today's buyers for fast delivery. Now, what I think companies have to do is think about what does their customer need ultimately, because in B2B, there is an understanding that in some product categories that 2-day shipping may not be as important. What I think is more important is when is it needed. So when we think about a building site or something that is a job site, it's going to be more probably, now I don't know the industry as well as you do, Will, but in this industry, I'd imagine that there's much more to do with the delivery time and the actual window in which it is that product is needed. So I think probably in the building products industry, that aspect, bringing that aspect to life on digital is probably more important than just plain 2-day delivery. So when we think about, the lesson here is understanding what your buyer needs. And the best way to understand that is to go to the buyer and ask them and talk to them about it, but also use your internal knowledge about your industry and about the workflows and such in your industry to design a digital experience that is bespoke to your industry. Now, we talked about, marketplaces and Amazon Prime, if they've got it, if they have their product and you're using their fulfillment centers, there's a great way to get, product to the customer in 2 days or 1 day because it's Prime eligible. But Amazon also is not creating bespoke experiences for every single one of the types of buyers that buys from their platform. This is an opportunity for you to really customize and deliver a great e-commerce experience for your buyer that is custom for your industry and will create long-term competitive advantage for you because you're making the buyer's job easier. Imagine that you can allow the customer to set delivery times very specifically and match them to jobs and store lists and attach those lists to job delivery times and progress. Imagine having this tied into your, maybe they have project management systems, the contractors, things like that, where you're syncing with their contract management systems, et cetera. I'm going to give you an example out of my book, which kind of speaks to this. My last case study in the book is from Robert Bosch Power Tools. Bosch is a very large manufacturer of tools, industrial supply, et cetera. They have a product that they launched in the market. It's called Bluehound Asset Tracking, and what this does is it embeds Bluetooth technology into all their tools, and it also gives buyers like these little round chips that they can put onto whatever their backhoe loaders or whatever the different materials or different assets going around a job site. Well, why is this important? Or why did Bosch do this? Well, at the end of the day, the biggest cost for many companies, and they're in the construction business, from what they've told me, is labor, and the fact that not matching labor and the assets accurately in a job site situation causes a loss of profitability to that construction company. Well, what they've done is they've built a software around this asset tracking system to allow those construction companies to best match labor to assets using this Blue Hound technology. They now have a really wonderful situation where they can help their customers improve their product profit margins. And that, what does that do? It increases loyalty to Bosch, and it creates a whole new product line and business for them. So that's, getting back to 2-day shipping, thinking about the workflow and the importance of your to your customer. I'd argue it may be less about, in this industry, about 2-day shipping and more about making sure it's there at the right time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I was just going to say that. It's all about timing rather than just, I need it in 2 days. Because if it's too early, 2 days could actually be a detriment if it's too early to the job site and you don't have anything else. So, or
Yep.
you need something else. So anyway, timing. Yeah, timing is everything. I don't know who said it first, but timing is truly everything. So great, great assessment there. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your team at Insiba. What's something you or maybe your team has recently achieved that you're pretty proud of?
Yeah.
A little brag moment for you.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. So there's so many companies, Will, that manufacturers in particular, that have no control of Amazon. And so we did a survey at Insiba about 1.5 years ago. It was actually just prior to COVID, maybe 2019. And we asked manufacturers specifically, we said, how many of you have products sold on Amazon? Right. And 70% said, yeah, our products are sold on Amazon. They're there. Then we said, okay, well, how many of you actually know who's selling your products on Amazon? And 72% said, we don't know who they are. So I laugh about it, but it's sort of painful. The thing is that Amazon it can be the Wild West. It can control you if you don't control it. And what's interesting about all this is that it's sort of a counterintuitive. Manufacturers, when they actually approach Amazon proactively and decide to control the channel, have an Amazon program, can take control of the channel and avoid these issues. Because what happens is you end up with, if you don't control it, you've got unknown sellers driving down your price, terrible product content, terrible brand content, and this is a place where 70% of people are searching for your product in your category. And other pure play brands are coming in that are great at Amazon. So I'm getting to your question, Will. Don't worry. This is the frame up, right? So what are we so proud of? Well, we've been able to take multiple product manufacturers and help them gain control of Amazon. How do we do that? Well, it's a multifaceted approach. You have to, number one, if you're selling to Amazon as a wholesale supplier, that may feel like the best way to avoid channel conflict, but you're surrendering the control to Amazon on price and other things. And there's some situations where that's called 1P or vendor central selling. And there's cases where that makes sense for manufacturers. But in many cases, we find that loss of control is really hurtful in those aspects and causes more channel conflict. So we have been able to successfully shift a number of manufacturers from a 1P model to either a hybrid, what's called seller central, or 3P model, where they control the content, the brand, the inventory, and the price on Amazon and mitigate channel conflict. And when you pair that with a channel control agreements, so distribution agreements, MAP policies, minimum advertised price policies, other things that, we have a great law firm we work with that does this stuff. Very reasonable, but come in and they'll help us to structure a program, and when you pair those things together, you end up with some great control. So I'll give you, one of our clients, we took them from, it's a mid-market company. We took their Amazon program on, we transferred them from 1P mostly to 3P. They still have some items in 1P. Doubled their revenue on Amazon over the course of 18 months. Doubled their revenue. Now, why? In 3P you also get more revenue because you get the retail price. That's the other piece of it. So we grew their volume from a unit perspective, but we also grew their revenue, and we gained control. We got rid of almost all of the resellers they didn't want. They authorized some resellers on Amazon, but for the most part, opportunistic resellers that were doing nothing but driving price down and not adding real value to their brand, removed them from the platform. And so at the end of the day, this company is getting more revenue. They have less channel conflict. They're more profitable and they're in control, and they know what's being sold on Amazon now at all times. So that's an example of we consider that a real win for them and for us too.
That is incredible. That's great. And then you did accomplish this in the span of 18 months, you said?
Took about 18 months to get. Now there's still more to do. There's always more to do. It doesn't
Story's
stop.
still being written. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
Very good.
Yeah, about 18 months.
Well, congratulations. That is fantastic. I got last question for you, and this is wide open. You did mention your favorite author, Good to Great. So what's the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
It's going to sound funny because because I've been talking the whole time here. Well, it was from my wife, by the way, who's a fabulous business executive. She spent over 10 years at FedEx. She was a sales leader there. She was and today she's running sales and marketing for a logistics solutions company. But she told me about 10 years ago, you got to become a better active listener, right? You never know that. Me talking at you for the last hour, but becoming a better active listener. And because what it does is it allows you to really understand the intention of the folks you're talking to, better connect with them, whether this is your personal life or whether it's your business life. Really taking time to listen thoughtfully and not just think about what you're going to say next or that sort of thing. That's probably the best advice she gave me a decade ago when I met her, and I'm thankful she's in my life today. And I don't know if she'd tell you I'm a great active listener in our marriage, but I hope so. I don't know.
As said before, the story's still being written, huh?
There you go. That's right.
Exactly. So that's great advice. And, that's why we do the show. That's why we have the podcast, so that people can listen and go back and anything that they missed, if they've not caught it the first time, but they can go back and listen again. So, Brian, I can't thank you enough. This has been wildly entertaining. It's been a lot of fun. And, I can't wait to actually go and listen to a little bit of your music, but also go back and listen to some of this great advice that you offered today. So thanks again, Brian. I really appreciate it. Working through those internet woes and joining us today. We appreciate it greatly. Thanks.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate the opportunity. Take care, everybody.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye now. Yeah, I just want to thank one more time. I want to thank Brian for joining us today on today's episode. You've been watching or been listening to. The title of today's show was E-commerce Channel Management and Indirect Selling Trends Shaping Buyer Behavior. And man, my mind is just racing right now. It's working on all the different clips that I'm going to have to be putting together for social media in the next few weeks. So if you missed anything, go to our YouTube channel, go to our LinkedIn, follow Manobite, because we're going to be taking all those little golden nuggets of wisdom, the little golden nuggets of wisdom, but also the large nuggets of wisdom that are just going to be we're going to be putting them out there. So please join us there. So until next time, you can follow us at Manobite on Facebook, LinkedIn, obviously Twitter, as well as Instagram. But I'll be honest with you, LinkedIn, that's where we like to spend our time. So, and of course, if you want to reach out to Mr. Brian Beck here, his LinkedIn is, I'm going to put it up on the screen one more time, e-commerce expert Beck. So you'll know what you'll be getting there if you look for him there. So reach out to him, connect with him there. It's been great having him on the show. And for those of you that were watching today, or those of you that are watching or listening to a replay on YouTube or listening to the podcast sometime in the future, we thank you for watching and we thank you for listening. And until next time, whatever life unboxes for you, may it be great.